So today we're going to look at additional inputs in microbit. And when we're talking about additional inputs, we're looking at things like acceleration, and we can have acceleration in X, Y, and the Z directions. We're looking at rotation, so we can look at pitch and roll. We're also going to have a look at light level. So if, for example, the light level is low, you can do something like turn up the brightness of the LEDs, or if the light level is high, you could turn down the brightness of the LED, and so on. We're also going to look at temperature. So again, you can check the temperature of the microbit, and so you could use that as a temperature sensor in a room. So if the temperature is quite high, you could show something, and if it's low, you could show something different. And then the final two we're going to look at are compass heading and magnetic force. So let's look at acceleration first. So as I mentioned, we can look at the X, the Y, and the Z acceleration. So when we're talking about acceleration in the X direction, we're talking about left and right. When we're talking about Y, we're talking about forward and back. So that's if your microbit is moving forward and back. And then the Z is actually physically moving up and down. So the value of acceleration in any of those three different directions is a value from minus 1023 to plus 1023, and each of them are measured in milli g-force. If you want to look at strength, you can look at the acceleration in all three directions. We're not going to look at that hugely as part of this course, but you can have a look at some of that yourself. When we're talking about rotation, we're looking at the roll, which is left and right, and the pitch, which is up and down, and this will give us a value in degrees from 0 to 360 degrees. The light level is a value from 0 to 255, and as you might expect, 0 would be that it is not very bright. In fact, it's dark, and 255 is the highest light level you can have. So again, as I mentioned, you could check to see if the light level is low, then you might turn up the brightness or something. One thing you need to be aware of with the light level is that the first time you call the light level, the value will be 0. So you should set it in this on start block and then reset it again or update it again before you use it. So just be a little bit careful on that. When we're talking about magnetic force, again, it's the magnetic force on the actual microbit. And this, we could use this to make a compass or various different things like that. So again, the X is left and right, the Y is forward and back, and the Z value is up and down. So again, you can look at the magnetic force in all those directions, and it can be a positive or negative value. And the final additional input we're going to look at is the compass heading. So this is the direction the microbit is pointing in. So it is a value in degrees from 0 to 360. So when we're talking about that direction, so 0 is at 12 o'clock or north, 90 degrees is at east or 3 o'clock, 180 degrees is at 6 o'clock or south, 270 degrees is in a westerly direction or at 9 o'clock, and then we're back up to 360 degrees again, back up to the 12 o'clock or pointing north again. So we'll just go to makecode.com now and create a straightforward project that looks at just acceleration in X and Y direction. So we're just going to create a new project here, and then we're just going to get rid of the onStart for the minute and the forever, and I'm just going to use the input onShake. And if we look at onShake, I'm going to make a variable, and I'm going to save in this variable acceleration in the X direction, so I'm going to call it ACCX. And then I want to set acceleration X2, and if I go to input here, you'll see if I move down here, there is an acceleration X. So if I pull that across and just drop it in, this is going to set the acceleration X variable to whatever that value is in acceleration X. Now again, if I just click on the little arrow here, you'll see you can get the X, the acceleration in the X direction, acceleration in the Y direction, acceleration in the Z direction, and you can also get the strength. We're just going to look at acceleration in the X direction here, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to show that number. So I'm just going to show number, and then I'm going to go into variables, and I'm going to show acceleration X. So now every time I shake, so if I shake it, it's showing it as 0, and I shake again, 791, and you can see the AX showing there on the microbit. So again, if I press shake or the shake button, it's showing it as 752, and there's a little bit of a difference between what it's showing. So now it's showing exactly the same as on there. But again, just when I'm shaking, you'll see here as I move it over, it's going from negative to positive. When I press the button, because I'm up in the right hand corner, it tends to be always in the positive direction. But as I move around here, it shows me the acceleration in the X, and you can see it's going from positive to negative. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm just going to show you, if I want to just show the number of the acceleration Y, I can just pull across show number. I don't have to store it as a variable, so I can just, sorry, I'm not going to use a variable this time. I can just go back here and I can pull across the acceleration here, and I can just click on Y. Now what I'm going to do, just to give me a little bit of time in between, I'm going to bring in the pause. So I'm going to show the number acceleration X. I'm going to pause for 1 second, and then I'm going to duplicate, and I'm going to pause for 1 second after acceleration Y again. So now if I do the shake, it shows acceleration X is 746. And now it's showing acceleration Y is minus 705. And again, once I've used the acceleration X and acceleration Y here, you can see that it shows them on the simulator. So that's really handy for your students. Now, it doesn't do that on the real microbit, but it's just really handy for your students. Once you've used those variables here, it shows you the values, and you can see that as you tilt it up and back, forward and back, your Y value changes. The X value isn't changing hugely here because I'm not changing the left and right, but your Y value is going up and back. And then if I go left and right, you can see that it's mostly the X, acceleration X, that's actually changing. So again, if I just press shake, it's showing 717 for X, and it's showing minus 760 for Y. Now what you might want to do here as well is you might want to put out a string. So if I put in show number acceleration X here and just put out X, and then I can go back to basic, show string, and before I show the number acceleration Y, I can just put out Y there. So when I shake it now, it puts out X first, and then it's showing it as 0, and Y, and it's showing it as minus 736. If I shake it again, X is 799, and Y is minus 736. You might have noticed there that the very first time I did it, it showed acceleration X as 0 to start off with, and that was just because I had it wasn't moving left to right, it was just in the middle. But now you can see it, and again, if I press the shake button again, it shows the X value 725 and the Y value of minus 705, which is very similar to what was on there. So that's just quite useful. Now if I change this to Z, once I've used the Z acceleration here, if I press shake now, you'll see you get your X, and then there's your Z, and that's just for up and down. So that's just an introduction to additional inputs. There are obviously lots of other ones. So if you look at input here and go to unshake, if you pull that across, you can click on the unshake and you can have logo up, logo down, lots of different ones. We're not going to go into those at the moment, and that's something you can look at yourself, but it's not really part of what we're going to cover in this course. But you can have a look at those and just see what they do. So in future screencasts, we're going to be looking at each of the other additional inputs and just seeing how we can incorporate them into projects.